Hello,
If the
host
outcome
Eric. Host Eric here, talking with famous people, and Taylor and I are going to talk briefly, and we'll get feedback from JC and everybody else as well about how to convince people that they're wrong. That's your cue.
I don't think that you can convince them that they're wrong. I think that the outcome has to be your own enjoyment of the conversation, or else you're going to end up mad and yelling at Hami on YouTube.
Do you think that's a bad outcome?
Not if you enjoy it.
Do you think it has less
There's no
solvency?
yelling
Do
at.
you think it has less
Hmm?
solvency than your way of talking to him? Like, do you think it has less impact than when you talk to him?
I don't think either of us impacted him. Enough to change his mind. So, I think that we have. I don't think that you can convince people that they're wrong with logic if their opinions are based on emotion. Then, if you're going to argue with them, the point has to be for your own pleasure.
Well, what if you're trying to convince them to acknowledge the fact that they're holding perspectives for reasons other than logical ones? You're not saying. I'm not saying change your position. I'm saying don't come in here and present it as though it were the logically superior position and then get upset at me when I point out that it's logically inferior. Instead, what you should do is accept the fact that you're making arbitrary decisions, and when you ask about your opinions on things, you say, "This is my opinion, but it's arbitrary." Do you think we can convince people to do that?
Not really.
I think I can.
Can you convince a cop to let you out of whatever he's going to get you into trouble for because the law is stupid?
Well, I wouldn't use that argument.
Have you used a similar argument successfully with a cop?
I wouldn't have tried. I haven't had much occasion. But I wouldn't try that argument chain, no. I wouldn't try that because of the reasons you're indicating. It's not a good argument chain with a cop. Because the way you... I mean, I think the way you deal with a cop is you have to utilize his mechanisms. But that's a cop. And that's a practical engagement in which there's a winner and a loser in a real sense of the word, not in the abstract sense, but rather somebody's getting hurt at the end of that, one way or the other. Either the cop's going to have his pride hurt, I guess, or something, or he's going to successfully steal some of your money. So, in that matter, it's a different occasion. I certainly wouldn't use the truth as my methodology would deal with a cop. I would include the truth in dealing with the courts to the extent that I would be permitted to do so, and I would take any extent to which I was not permitted to do so as cause for making more fuss. But I don't know if that would work or not. I mean, I haven't actually put in that sort of time and energy that's required to know how much you can get away with in terms of argument.
What's an arbitrary rule at the school where you teach, where you do debate? Dress code?
Well, there aren't any because it's my school.
Okay.
We don't have any rules.
Cool. Anyone who's tasked with enforcing rules, or who the types that just enjoy that sort of thoughtless adherence. You ever tried to convince them that something's stupid? You ever tried to argue some? Okay, I'm trying to phrase this without sounding like as much of an asshole as I'm going to sound like. Have you ever tried to argue someone out of their religious beliefs?
Maybe a long time ago. Yeah, I mean a long time
Did it
ago,
work?
for sure. Well, I wasn't actually doing it for that reason.
Right. That's not the point, but it ends up in that discussion.
Then no, it didn't. But yeah, I understand. That's
Even though your logic is so solid. and their beliefs are formed on such mush.
Well, but I mean, I consider myself a theist.
I'm not trying to argue you out of your theism. I'm just saying it's the emotional attachment in spite of logic.
See, I think in that instance, you're trying to get them to change their behavior, not their belief. If to say that you're trying to like get them out of their religion, is to say stop engaging in these belief-oriented behaviors. Because when you're, it's like it's not
people's money.
What's that?
Like stealing people's money for other people because it's good.
Well, I don't think that's a religious behavior, is it?
It's kind of approached the same way. It's ethics based on a higher authority where you adhere to it because you're told to with no independent thought.
That's not how I interpret theism.
Not all theism, but a good deal of it.
All right. I mean, I'll grant you that the majority of practicing religions, as they manifest in the world today, are there to. Well, I mean, I think in their best manifestation, they're there to try to get people to focus on metaphysical stuff that they maybe naturally don't focus on. I think in their worst incarnation, they're there to get people to conform to mores that are threatened, and therefore they're trying to clamp down and try to make everybody more like the threatened values that they are unreasonably attached to.
But the point is not religion. I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about the belief system, the reason people believe what they believe, and the reason why you can't argue them out of it.
But my point is that religion operates differently. So, okay, I understand your point, and I get this in an analogy. I'm saying I don't think religion makes a particularly good analogy. Other things might make a better analogy. But I agree. I get where you're going. That
absolutely make an analogy. Your school has no rules. Throw me a line here.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'm trying. I am actually. I'm working with you. I'm not working against you here. Where I'm going. I understand what you're saying. You're saying that, at the end of the day, if somebody has a belief that they feel passionately about, most of the time it's not because they've reached that belief dispassionately. In fact,
passion is almost always the enemy of logic.
Right. And so, as a matter of fact, it makes perfect sense to think that somebody who determines their beliefs dispassionately and applies a systemic approach to resolving issues in dispute is going to be willing to change things, and so less attached to their beliefs and more comfortable with the notion of deciding belief on logical grounds. But here's my point, though, is I don't necessarily need them to believe differently or vote differently or anything like that. What I'm saying is if I can just get somebody to use the same arguments I used against them against somebody else, then I've already undermined their worldview substantially, and it's starting to spread. If they use the tools that are used against them, then all of a sudden it becomes increasingly difficult for them to sustain unscrutinized beliefs themselves. They may not come around to my beliefs, but they'll probably stop clinging so hard to theirs. It would seem. Because at some point somebody's going to make a bad argument that Hami made to me to Hami, and then Hami's going to pull out one of the responses that I used or you used, and he's going to say that to them. And at that point he will have chopped the legs out from underneath his ability to maintain wrongness in the face of obvious truth.
Or all we did was piss Hami off, and all he knows now is more than anything, we deserve to have our money taken for those poor fuckers.
Well, I mean, the thing is, but we can't fight out policy fights on that ground, right? It's not possible for us to have those conversations. And people have a limited resistance to strength in all vectors, but especially in argumentation. They have a limited resistance to strength. The person who attempts to defend some sort of law that prohibits gay people from getting married, to the extent that they are subjecting those arguments to any kind of scrutiny in a public forum, they leave that bruised. And it changes their behavior in some way or another. Either they make different arguments, they stop talking about it openly, which is not a desirable outcome, but at least they're doing that because they know this shit doesn't fly. And it doesn't fly not because you're being hateful, it doesn't fly because those arguments are weak as fuck and they fall apart at the slightest hint of a breeze. And so, it's like, it does affect the world a little bit. I would love to hear Hami's thoughts on this. Well, what does he actually think? Does he hate me more than ever now? Or does he think that I'm wronger than ever before? He claims that he came into his experience of talking with many people libertarian, and he is now a statist, a full-blast statist. I don't know. Did I turn him the wrong direction or something?
Attacks your beliefs.
Oh, they fall apart.
They do?
Yeah, they fall apart.
Do you believe them anyway? After somebody attacks them, and they fall apart, do you still believe them anyway?
Make you think. If it doesn't make you think, well then, I mean, what were you so strongly believe in that you're not gonna look into it?
But do you have a lot of strong beliefs anyway?
Me?
Yeah.
No, not really.
She's been around me a while.
Well, I wouldn't expect that type to,
Yeah,
right?
the strongest one would be, but, huh?
I said I wouldn't expect ISFP to have particularly strong beliefs because they're things that persist over time as internal developing mental projects, which I think ISFP doesn't really prioritize as their recreation activity.
You prioritize recreation?
That's what I'm saying. Is you do prioritize recreation, I guess, as opposed to generating logically, like beliefs that you insist upon. It's not worth fighting over, probably. Would you agree with this, that most of these things, these beliefs people have, aren't worth fighting over? Or do you think they are?
Especially religion. God, that one drives me nuts.
You have
There are just so
you have
many-
an especially weird religious background.
Well, there's just so many different religions.
You're Zoroastrian?
Everyone who's religious is 100% positive.
Is 100% what? Everyone who's religious is 100%.
Everyone
what?
who has a religious belief is 100% positive that theirs is the right one.
Well, and maybe some of them are right. Have you considered that? Maybe the Zoroastrians were right.
But not all of them are right. We know that.
Well, I think right now none of them are right because it was the Zoroastrians who were right, and they're all
I
dead.
think they're good just because they're good for some people.
Religious beliefs?
Some.
Your mom's?
No, not my mom. Not how I was brought up. The basis of Christianity is usually good.
I think so.
Until
I mean, yeah. I think so.
people take it too far.
We got off topic, though.
I mean, sort of. Not really. What were we talking about?
Well, about Stainism and
convincing
then
people.
religion.
Convincing people. That's what we're talking about. Convincing people. So it's not really off topic. I think that we ought to think more about religious beliefs as religious behaviors and as persistent behaviors. And to the extent that people persist in those behaviors, they are good or bad according to two metrics. One, how much they provide the individual who exercises those behaviors, and two, how much they impose, minus how much they impose upon others. So that's, I think, is a pretty good way to determine whether a religious practice, a religious behavior is worth spending time doing or not. Is you add up you say, well, what benefits does it provide the individual, and what imposition does it require upon others, and then it's good or bad accordingly. Seems a fair enough way to measure it.
Every possible way.
What kind of religious
Are
beliefs
you,
did you have? Could you tell us about her religious upbringing?
the way ministry.
The Way
If
Ministry?
you Google, yeah, the way.
I
Back
haven't.
in like the night.
I can't really Google while I'm filming on the computer simultaneously because my computer doesn't have enough processing power. But
Basically a crappy cult,
it was a cult. You were raised in a cult.
kinda.
Well,
Cult
can you give us lots of details? I want to hear all about it. That's got to be interesting.
I'm Satan.
You're Satan. Well,
I'm Satan. I was evil and I was possessed. I've made it to Satan. She may not think well of me, but she certainly thinks highly.
I personally want to thank you for knowledge of good and evil. Appreciate that.
I thought you should know.
I totally was like, why was this fucker hiding this shit from us? Why was he hiding it?
That one thing we weren't supposed to do. Gotta fuck with it.
Yeah, I have a video about the fact that it was obviously an ENTP who convinced the chick to eat the apple, and didn't eat it himself. He didn't eat it himself. He just convinced her to eat it. You should totally do that. You should totally do that. What has this fucker got to hide anyway? I'd stay here and eat it with you, but I gotta go.
Do you guys understand why you're good at convincing people?
I don't think I am good at convincing people. That's the thing. I don't think I'm good at convincing people.
You don't think you're good at it? I'm sure people get offended or whatever. They have to throw up their like guard real quick and stand up for whatever their belief is, but you send them away with questions because you've taken out all the bullshit.
Well, I didn't say I wasn't good at defeating people. I wasn't necessarily good at convincing people, right? That's what we're talking about, is the difference between defeating people and convincing people. My basic operating procedure until that conversation the other night was I will convince people by making their wrongness painful. But I'm not sure that really works. I don't know.
It's annoying.
It's annoying. But I mean, the wrongness is the annoying thing. My just and righteous indignation at it, there's nothing bad about that. That wrongness needs to be shown the door. Here you go, wrongness. But not everybody loves that.
No, like nobody loves that.
Nobody?
I would
Who
rather
loves
have
that?
lots of sane people would rather have that than to sit and stew in their own fucking wrongness.
Well, I mean, look, the thing is, my hope is that eventually we can get to a point of consensus where we say, okay, look, now that I've shown you that there's absolutely no possible words you can say that support this position, even if you don't agree with me, will you agree that you shouldn't be the one making the decision? Because you can't answer any of these points about it.
They're fighting.
Yeah. Okay. Hi.
All right. Can you tell us about the way? I want to know about the way. I want to learn the way.
Oh, well, one thing, if you're not Christian, pretty much if you don't believe in God and like Jesus was the one. I mean, whatever. The basic is there, but you're either good or you're evil. Is what it boils down to. A lot of fear is injected into that religion. You know, believe me or fear me. Believe me, you're going to hell. There's just a lot of fear there.
Do they try to make you stay in the group? Do they put barriers up to leaving the group, or what? Do you have to live together?
Well, this was more just a family thing. My aunt got into it back in, there was a Dr. Werewolf or something like that who started it back in, the 1950s. And he died in the 1970s. He wrote, 5 books. Most of them have been, plagiarized and stuff, so his books were crap. My aunt, she actually went into the, I guess a mission or something like that with that. And one of the things they had him do was like hitchhike across the country with nothing but the grace of God. So, in the
How'd that
80s,
work out?
she lived. Her and my uncle, they lived. Had some close calls with some truckers and stuff. But yeah, my aunt probably would have died if it would have been her by herself. So, and I haven't looked into much like how it worked out for other people. A lot of people, like coming out of the way, I think there's been a lot of suicides and stuff. That's religion. It's so drilled into your head. It's kind of weird. Any other questions about the religion, or?
What's drilled into your head about it? Like that you can't question it?
Yeah, pretty much.
And then,
I mean, my brother stopped believing, and then he showed like that was hard on me, not like even questioning it. Now I'm okay. There is some stuff that it's just hard for me to like not believe because it has been drilled in my head, but most of it's fine to believe. Like, it doesn't really hurt to believe in Jesus, but I'm not going to go try to make everybody else believe in him.
did it require a lot of rituals for the family? Like you have to go to church a lot and stuff like that?
No. We didn't go to church, actually, because there isn't a way ministry church around here. When it dropped off in like I think in the 90s, the followers of it, I can't remember, from around the world, it dropped a lot. But my family was still one of them that was following it.
Huh.
And,
Did it have limitations like you can't drink coffee or anything like that?
no, actually,
It gives you the right to basically, as long as you're part of the way, you can decide any old assholeish thing you want about anyone else. You're given the right to do that because they don't believe what you and the way believe. It's sort of like Islam in that charming way.
there's a lot of like, I don't know, you shouldn't judge your neighbor, but there's a lot of fucking judging going on.
Do they have a word for non-believers besides, or do they use non-believers or non-wayers or?
One of the big things is like, if you believe there's supposed to be like, the seed that's been planted in your heart and you believe, and that seed can't be unplanted. Well, if you get the other seed planted in your heart, that one can't be unplanted either. And it just kind of, at least with age, as like my mom has believed and stuff, like it just went from like, there are people, they can't seem to accept that there are people that just don't believe.
What's the other seed?
You're evil.
What's the other seed?
Evil, I guess.
Evil.
If you decide to worship Satan.
And what do they think about non-way Christian denominations?
Evil.
No, they're still Christians. Just they're wrong.
They're still completely open to every bit of judgment and condemnation that a non-believer is. They just start out at a higher tier of fuck you.
Well, that's better than a lower tier of fuck you. I mean, if I have to pick a fuck you tier, I'll take the higher tier. But I'm not Christian, so I have to be on the lower tier, unfortunately. Well,
Now, my question was, I had a lot of friends that didn't believe, and that's what bugged me with the religion. Pretty much, if like you didn't believe and like Jesus came and everybody went to heaven, it's like, well, what the hell happened to the people that don't believe? Well, they go to hell. Like, man, I know a lot of people going to hell then, and I didn't like that.
well, what happened to you in hell, do you suppose? Did they say much about what happened in hell?
It's burn for eternity.
Burn for eternity. So,
It's a violent hell. It's not a party in hell.
Not like Catholic hell, though. There's so many hells, and
Well, Catholics are going to hell too.
well, they have like purgatory and shit, right? I don't know.
Yeah. I'm currently designing a new universe which has got over 300 levels of heaven and hell. It's going to be great. Be really personalized for people who come there.
That and heaven, yeah, I don't know. Heaven always sounded boring.
Heaven sounds horrible.
Boring.
Oh, boring. Well, that's the thing. If you can't die, then it kind of removes the ticking clock suspense from the whole thing, right?
Well, that's one thing. Like a lot of Christians, they seem to believe like once you die, you do go to heaven, like right away.
Boom, heaven.
And then, huh?
I said, boom, heaven.
Yeah, boom, heaven. Not in the way. You die, and then, well, you sleep until Jesus comes back. Then the dead are risen and go to heaven, and then it's the Christians on earth. And the Jews. I don't know exactly how the Jews are supposed to play out, but Jews are like, whatever, God's people or some shit.
Okay, Jews, hey, welcome. Guys, listen. We've got heaven for you too. It's over there.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of near back behind where the dumpsters are. But you guys are going to love it. We put some mahjong tiles there. And you can set up your own little thing, okay? But this here, Christian heaven, okay? So Jesus is in here. You want to stay away. He's still mad about that you're killing him shit. But he's being cool, so just go over there. That's how it works. I'm an expert on the way. Trust me. This Eric's the way.
Oh, God.
And Eric's the way. The Jews do get to go to heaven, but they have to go to a separate heaven near the Christians.
Sounds kind of judgy.
Yeah, well, every religion gets... Well, it depends. Like, non-religious people, they get randomly assigned to a religion. So, for example, if you're a non-religious, you might end up in Buddhist heaven, you might end up in Christian heaven. You just don't know. Because they don't have a heaven, because they're, of course, not religious.
Like toss of a dime or something?
It's a...
Look at the draw.
High card. They play a high card. They just draw from a deck of cards, and whoever gets a high card gets to pick. So that's how they do it. Anyway, would you like that heaven? Would you like to go to that heaven? Would you like to go to the way? I'll give you hybrid the way Christian heaven plus a little bit of with a higher amount of non-believers too to just mix it up for you.
Yeah.
Is that a deal? Is that a deal, or do you want to stay with your existing metaphysics?
Stay with what?
You can either stay with your existing heaven, or choose Eric's new heaven. Which do you choose?
I'll probably choose Eric's new heaven.
All right, thank you. My first client for Eric's new heaven business.
God, are you God?
I'm not God. I have been contracted by God to construct the new heavens.
Because what?
God hired me to make the heaven, the new heavens.
Oh.
He got tired of it. He's old now. He's like, I have made so many heavens, Eric. I'm tired of it. You make the heavens now. That's what happened. The money's great, so I'm gonna.
Oh, here's one weird thing about the way. A lot of them, like followers, claim to have like God talk to them, quite literally.
What does God say to them?
I don't know.
Did God ever talk to you?
Not really. No, pretty much. I'm sure that they because I followed it for a while, and I'm pretty sure they're just getting mixed up with the good conscience inside their head. Sometimes bad too. My mom used to come up with some wild shit.
Like what?
Yeah, it was usually if she'd be drinking. I mean, that's where I found out, like, she thought people were evil. Like, my ex-husband, and my sister's ex, and it was kind of like, okay, I don't think that's God talking to you.
I think that's Jack Daniels talking to you, Mom.
Yeah. Which, actually, Jim Beam, but...
that was actually my whiskey, too, was Jim Beam. I didn't drink Jack Daniels, I drank Jim Beam. Just to be contrary, Entp. I wanted to go for the I intentionally
do
didn't have a
anything.
fancy whiskey, and when you went somewhere with fancy whiskey, I did intentionally order Jim Beam. 'Cause that's just being contrary.
Mm. Yeah, I did a lot of Jaeger bombs. That was my.
Do you still drink? I don't drink anymore. I quit.
No, I'll have a beer every now and then, but I don't drink.
It's a challenging substance. Some people can handle it fine. Some people can't. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I can't really. No substance is probably good for me.
Right on. All right. Well, this seems like a good ending for this video. I enjoyed chatting with you, Katie.
There you go.
And thank you for talking with me and telling us about the way. That was really interesting. And see you later.